everyone, and welcome back to our next trigonometry lesson. And today we will look at the ratio of special angles. Now it's so important that you remember that we get three types of special angles, which is 30 degrees, 45 degrees and 60 degrees. Do you need to memorize these two triangles that we give you here? Well, you can, but you don't have to. Your calculator gives you the ratios as long as you show your steps when we work with special angles. That's the important thing. Now, what they usually wanted you to do in previous years is they want you to memorize these two triangles. And if I tell you, for example, that you need to write down the sine of 30 degrees, and I'll show you quickly. If I say the sine of 30 degrees, what they wanted you to do is you memorize this triangle. Then you know you have to look from this side in this triangle. The sine is always, can you remember? It's always my opposite divided by my hypotenuse, right? Okay, great. Now, that means that this side here is my hypotenuse and this one will be my opposite. So it will be 1 over 2, right? So then we can say it's 1 over 2. Now, that's what we usually did, and we had to memorize these two triangles. But if you take your calculator, just like the previous lesson, and you go type sine 30 degrees equals, you'll get a half, okay? So what if I ask you to get the cosine of 45 degrees? In previous years, we always had to go and we had to memorize this triangle, and then we look from this side because we want the cosine, or from that side it will end up to be the same answer. So this is my hypotenuse, this is my adjacent, so we will end up with having 1 over the square root of 2, because the cosine is my adjacent over my hypotenuse, and this is the adjacent and that's my hypotenuse, right? Okay, but then here's what we had to do. 1 over the square root of 2 cannot be left as 1 over square root of 2. We had to rationalize the denominators because we can never have a denominator with a square root. So what we do is we multiply with that square root 2 over square root of 2, which is the same as multiplying this with 1, because square root of 2 over square root of 2 is equal to 1, right? And that times a 1 is still this. But we're just writing its equivalent. So then we just take this denominator, we use it as the numerator and denominator of a new fraction, and we multiply. So then we end up with the following. We have square root of 2, and what do we get if we take the square root of 2 times the square root of 2? We get 2. Okay, so there we go. And you can test this now. So instead of just knowing your triangles and going through all of this, just take your cosine of 45 degrees on your calculator, press equal, and you'll end up with square root over 2. So they already rationalize the denominator for you anyway on your calculator. So again, do you need to memorize these two triangles? Well, you can, but you don't have to. All that you have to do is your calculator gives you the ratios, but please don't just run into your final answer. You have to show your steps. So if you see sine 30 degrees in your question, you have to write down it's a half. If you have cosine 45 degrees, you have to write down square root 2 over 2. So let me show you quickly. So if they ask you a sum, for example, the sine of 30 degrees multiplied by the cosine of 45 degrees. You cannot just type this into your calculator and get one answer. Because they are special angles, we have to write here. Well, you can do this part on your calculator because no one will know whether you use the triangles or your calculator. So the sine of 30 degrees on my calculator says it's a half, right? So put that in brackets and multiply with the cosine of 45 degrees, which is on my calculator square root 2 over 2. So multiply it with square root 2 over 2. And now you can just multiply those two with one another. So I'm showing my steps. So this will be square root 2 over 4. Okay, because when we multiply 1 times square root 2 is square root 2, 2 times 2 is 4, and there I'm done. And I bet you, if you type this into your calculator just like that, so if you say sine 30 degrees and you multiply it with the cosine of 45 degrees, you will end up getting square root 2 over 4. But the secret is, when you have special angles, you have to make the one who marks your paper believe that you know they are special angles and that you know their ratios. So show each one and then your final answer. Don't just type this and get to your final answer, then we know you used your calculator. Okay, so let's go and try some more examples. Now here are some examples that we can try. So let us use special angles to calculate the following without the use of a calculator. Now I put these in inverted commas because it simply means please show your steps. It doesn't mean I cannot use my calculator. So now I showed you before, instead of memorizing the two triangles, we can just do this on our calculator, but we have to show our answers for special angles, okay? To make the person who marks our paper believe that we do know our ratios or our triangles. So the cosine of 30, I can just type that into my calculator because I don't want to draw those triangles and figure them out. So the cosine of 30 degrees is just the square root of 3 over 2. Okay, and then we add the tangent of 60 degrees. Now the tangent of 60 degrees, if you do that on your calculator, will just be the square root of 3, but we can put it over 1 so that it's also as a fraction. Okay, and now we just add these two together, and we can do that on the calculator as well, but I'll do this manually. So this will be a 2, the LCM of the denominators, then 2 divided by 2 is 1, 1 times square root 3 is square root 3, plus 2 divided by 1 is 2 times square root 3 is 2 square root 3, and then I'm almost done because this will give me 3 square root 3 divided by 2. Because if I've got 1 square root 3 plus 2 square roots of 3's, I'll get 3 of them, right? Okay, so you'll see that if you type that plus that into your calculator, you'll get that answer anyway, because you're going to get marks for that, and for that. That's why we cannot just type this into our calculator and go straight to that, because they say without the use of a calculator. But they will never know how I got these ratios for the special angles, whether I used my triangles or whether I just used my calculator. Now, how about the next one? It's important to know my writing, as you know from our previous lesson with the calculator. What does this mean? It means 4 times the cosine of 30 degrees, which is then squared, okay? So the cosine 30 degrees squared times a 4, okay? Plus the tangent of 30 degrees and the sine of 60 degrees. So let's do this. I'll write down my 4, and then I know that the cosine of 30 degrees, and I'm not going to draw my triangle, I'm just going to do it on my calculator. So it is a square root 3 over 2, and then I still need to square it, okay? So the cosine of 30 degrees is square root 3 over 2, and I still need to square it, and then I need to multiply with 4. So now, here I have plus, what is the tangent of 30 degrees? And that is the square root 3 divided by 3, okay? And then I still need to multiply with the sine of 60 degrees. And the sine of 60 degrees, that gives me square root 3 over 2. So let me do that. So that's the square root 3 over 2. Okay, brilliant. Now, let's continue. This is 2 terms, so you can type that into your calculator, or you can do this manually. We have to show our steps, so this will be 4 times, and then the square root of 3 times the square root of 3. Why? Because it's 2 times, gives me a 3, and then 2 to the power of 2 will be a 4. Okay, brilliant. Then plus. And here, when we multiply two fractions, it's numerators with numerators, denominators with denominators. Square root 3 times square root 3, that gives me a 3, and 3 times 2 is 6. And from here, what can we do? We know that these two will cancel out, because that will be 4 over 1, and 4 over 1 times 3 over 4, cross cancellation, so we actually have 3 over 1 plus 3 over 6, which is a half, right? So this is 3 over 1 plus a half, and that gives me 3.5, and we are done. And you can test this by typing it exactly the same way. Just remember how we do this with our calculator, right? So it's the cosine of 30 degrees, and we have to close that bracket twice, and then we add the tangent of 30 degrees, and I'm busy typing it now exactly the same way as it is here, and then multiplied by the sine of 60 degrees, and to see if I get the same answer, which is 7/2, which is 3.5, and we are right. Okay, brilliant. So you can always test your answer. How about the next one? So again, we want to use our triangles to find the special angles, but we can actually use our calculator. We just have to show our steps, right? So the sine of 45 degrees, that's square root 2/2. So we have the square root 2/2, and then we are multiplying with the cosine of 45 degrees, and the cosine of 45 degrees is also square root 2/2. Okay, that's the top part. And then we still need to divide with the bottom part. And the tangent of 60 degrees, that's equal to the square root of 3/1, or just the square root of 3. I always put it over 1. And then the tangent of 30 degrees, which is equal to the square root of 3/3. Okay, and now we multiply this top part, multiply the bottom part, because we want to simplify the numerators and denominators as far as possible. Square root 2 times square root 2, that is a 2. And 2 times 2 is 4. And then we divide with the bottom part. Square root 3 times square root 3, that is 3. And 1 times 3 is 3. Okay, great. So basically 3/3 is a 1. So we have 2/4 divided by 1. And that's basically 2/4. And that is a half. And we are done, because 2/4 is a half, and a half divided by 1 is a half. Okay, brilliant. And that is all there is to it. And you can type this into your calculator by using that little fraction line. So you can just say sine of 45, and then you multiply with the cosine of 45 degrees. And then as the denominator, you can just type tan, or the tangent of 60 degrees times the tangent of 30 degrees. And then you can just double check if you get the right answer, which is a half. And you are done. But please remember, for special angles, you get a mark for that, a mark for that, a mark for that, and for your final answer, because you have to be able to show that you know these are special angles. And you don't need to know your triangles, because you can just get it on your calculator as long as you show it. Great. See you again next time. Bye. This is your host Richard T, and thank you for joining us. Please visit our website mathsa.co.za for free guided exam tutorials.